very special surprise for you, because over my right shoulder at the moment is my favorite animal, and it's sitting in the shade, busy panting because it is very, very hot. So Tingana, who is our male leopard, as that's his name, he's the big dominant male leopard in this particular area. He's managed to find himself a meal. Look, you see how he's looking into the tree? Now the reason he's looking into the tree is because there is an impala in the tree. So he managed to catch himself some food, probably during last night or even the night before, because he's eaten quite a bit and he's now taken it up into the tree where it's going to be kept safe from anything else like hyenas and lions and all of those kind of animals. He's very clever that he does that, and it's one of the things that leopards do very often to try and keep their kills safe from others. It really is the best thing to find, and we're lucky because as you guys came to us, because we had a few little technical issues, we just managed to find him, so we're super happy. And when I see a leopard, it makes me so excited, so I'm very, very glad that we managed to find one already so early in the afternoon. Now you'll notice that he's breathing very fast, so he's sitting there, his head is moving a lot, his mouth is open, and he's breathing very quickly. Now remember, if you are very hot, let's say that you've run and you ran for a long distance, you get hot and you get very tired, and what do you do then? Then you breathe quite heavily, and the reason why that happens is because moisture or water vapor that is on your mouth, or water that's on your mouth in the form of your saliva, that then as you breathe, the hot air causes evaporation, and it causes that water to turn into a gas and lift off the tongue, and that actually cools their tongue down, and it's basically like a little air conditioning system for this leopard. And that's how they're able to cope with very, very hot days in the South African bush, is that they're able to pant like this and also to find themselves shade. You see how he's put himself in a nice shady spot so that he can be really quite cool when there's hot weather about and there's a nice wind that's blowing, so it is the perfect place for a leopard to hide. And you can see, look at how good his camouflage is. He has really great camouflage. He's able to blend in those spots that he has all over his body, help to break up those outlines and make sure that he is almost invisible to the animals that he hunts. A leopard is an animal that is an ambush predator. It likes to only kind of sneak around and doesn't want to be seen anything, and so those spots help for it to blend in and make it very difficult for us to see them normally. They're also shy, reclusive animals. Luckily for us, this particular male is very relaxed and he allows us to get quite close to him, and that's why we're able to see them. And in fact, here in South Africa is one of the best places in the world to be able to see leopards because of how relaxed they often are in our company. So really great way to start our afternoon, that's for sure. Now remember, you can ask any questions that you may have. I'm going to just reposition ourselves slightly because it is very hot in the sun and I don't want to get a sunburn, so I'm going to try and find some area where I can get a little bit of shade that's not as hot as where we are now. So I'm just going to move a little bit through here and try and see if I can find a little bit of a better spot. I'm just got to go around that bush there. Ooh, VM, I don't know if there is much shade for us here. Maybe over here we'll get a bit of shade. Let's try. No, it doesn't look like much shade. But Justin, you're wondering why his eyes are closed. His eyes are closed, Justin, because he's very hot. So he's panting a lot. He's sleepy because he's had a really big meal. He's eaten a lot of food during the night. And now with the sun out, it makes him very tired. I don't know, Justin, if you have a lot to eat, then sometimes you feel a little bit tired afterwards. Well, I know I do. And so that's why his eyes are just closed. You'll probably find that he'll have a nice rest. So he's going to put his head down just now and have a little sleep before he'll then wake up tonight or around the sunset time, and that's when he's going to go up into the tree and start feeding. Right, now I'm going to sit with our leopard the whole afternoon because it's just the most wonderful animal, and while we do that, I believe my friend Jamie, who's all the way in the Masai Mara, has a beautiful spotted cat that is a lot taller than this one. I have a very, very good view of him. We've repositioned ourselves and he's rolled over and moved a little bit, and he's now lying right next to us. You can see, we can get all the detail, his eyes and his mouth, and you can see, look how much of saliva is coming out of that mouth with him panting the way that he is. There's lots of saliva that is starting to come out, and that's what I was talking about earlier when I was saying that it'll cool this animal down, is that saliva, that stuff that is running out of his mouth is going to be getting evaporated by the hot air, and you're going to find a situation where it's going to cool his tongue down. But how cool is that to see? Look at those beautiful big canines. So those teeth that you see there, those are there to try and help kill animals. So when they're trying to grab their prey like an impala, they're going to grab it with those, and it's going to help squash the windpipe. Now, you see he's just looking around. There are some other cars in this particular area that are just coming into view, and these are people that have come all the way out to South Africa to come and see these animals. So they've gone on the aeroplane all the way across, and they are lucky enough to come and see this leopard in real life. You can see his ears are just going back a little bit, so even though he might not look at where that vehicle came from, his ears will move a little bit. He'll listen to all the sounds. A leopard is an amazing animal. Like most of the cats, it has very good sense of hearing, amazing sense of sight, and a very good sense of smell as well. So it uses all of those to be able to find animals, including, if you look around his face, he's got very long whiskers. Now, for those of you that have had a dog or a cat, you'll know that they have whiskers, and this helps these guys when it's dark in the night. Now, unfortunately, I'm really battling to hear any of the questions that are coming through. It's all broken up, but he's going to yawn a little bit. I wonder if maybe he's going to move. You see, he's just licking his mouth a little bit to be able to get rid of any of that saliva that's hanging. It will be uncomfortable for him. There's also a bit of a sneeze, and the reason why he's sneezing is because there's a number of insects around, in particular what we call a mopani bee, or a stingless bee. It's a tiny little insect, and today they've been everywhere. We've been out working on the cars today a little bit, and they were around us the whole day. Now, these tiny little bees, they like moisture, and so what they'll do is they'll often go towards where his nose is, and they go and they try and get the moisture from his nose, including other things like biting flies, and so it irritates him a little bit, and you'll find every now and then he'll sneeze, or he'll shake his head, or he'll twitch his ear, or twitch his mouth, and that's to try and get rid of them. Also, he's trying to get rid of all of that stuff that was hanging down. He's done a pretty good job of it, actually. He's managed to get rid of everything that was drooling out there at one point. What have you seen, boy? Now, he's looking around also because he knows when he's got a kill that there's potentially a bit of a scent that drifts around, so he's got to be careful of things like hyenas and leopards and lions that potentially might come into this area. So you'll find he'll look around and listen to the wind quite carefully. Megan, I'm sorry, unfortunately I cannot hear a word that you're saying. It's very broken up, so I don't think we're going to be able to do too many questions at the moment. There we... Kaylin, apparently you're wondering if these leopards eat leaves. So no, unfortunately not. These guys are meat eaters. They will survive off eating all kinds of animals, so mostly small to medium-sized antelope, so something like a deer, or in this case an impala that is up in the tree, or they'll eat smaller things like little scrub hares, which are like rabbits. They'll eat sometimes birds, lizards, lots of those kind of things, but unfortunately not leaves. The reason why is because their stomach is not designed for it. Their dental structure, so their teeth, are also not designed to be able to crunch down grass and to flatten leaves and smush them all like a big elephant like Scott has got. Those are different sets of teeth, and Taylor's got the buffalo as well. They also have these flatter teeth that cut pieces of grass up, and they're able to then swallow and digest it, whereas this leopard has very sharp pointy teeth so that it acts like a knife or a pair of scissors and can cut little chunks of meat off, and it can eat meat instead of anything else. So they survive only on meat. You'll find sometimes though they will eat a bit of grass, and that's if they've had a situation where their stomach, they've got a few things that are not really digesting very well, and so sometimes they'll go and eat a bit of grass, and it can cause them to get a little bit sick, and they then regurgitate or vomit this sort of hair and bone and bits that are not digesting well, and that then comes out and they'll feel a lot better about it later. Now I think he's going to have a bit of a nap just now. I think we're going to have a situation where he's probably going to sit in the shade like this for quite some time, and I wouldn't be surprised if his head goes down. Now that everybody is settled down and the vehicles are here, you can find they might fall asleep, and from there he'll then get up and go. But while we sit with him and see whether or not he's going to go up into the tree and maybe go have a feed. Now, unfortunately, I can't turn the other way because otherwise he might eat my legs. So while we sit here and wait for him to do that, let's go across to my friend Brent all the way in the Masai Mara and see what he's up to and where he's bumbling to. Well, a warm welcome back to all of our regular viewers. Remember that you can get hold of us on #SafariLive or YouTube chat if you want to ask any questions. Tingana is still having a really long, very powerful kind of panting session. He looks so uncomfortable at the moment. He doesn't look like he's very happy at all. He's been quite grumpy with a few flies that have been flying around. Every now and then he's snapping and growling at them, and is not exactly a happy boy with this heat. But it is cooling down quite a bit now. Now that we're in the shade, there seems to be this cool wind that is blowing, and I think Tingana is going to be a lot happier when the sun gets down just a little bit lower. The only problem is he's about to get himself into quite a lot of sunshine, because the only shade is the form of this big marula that we're sitting under at the moment. And if you look on his right shoulder, you can see the sun is actually starting to hit him directly on that shoulder. And I think that as that sun comes a little lower, it's going to get too hot for him there, and he's going to find that he's going to move off and try and find some shade. Now, where I want him to go is to my left-hand side, because there is a massive termite mound just to my left here. That is a perfect place, and if he sits up there, we're going to have the most magical afternoon with Tingana, because the light there is going to be absolutely perfect. Now, the reason why I'm sitting in a very awkward position is because I can't get my legs out, because I have a branch right here, and well, Tingana is also staring at me rather intently, and so I'm not going to be able to sort of swing that way, so I have to kind of put my back to him at this stage. But Wade, you're wondering if leopards would hunt large animals like rhinos or buffaloes or even elephants. So in my time here in the Sabi Sands, I have seen Tingana bring down a few baby buffalo. I've seen him also actually, I don't know whether he killed it, but he was seen following a very emaciated, very dodgy old male buffalo in the drought last year, which the next morning we found him actually eating, and so I don't know whether it died of natural causes or he killed it, but that would be a bit extreme, as to kill one of those bull buffaloes really takes a lot of energy. So I think it would only be in a situation where you have drought like that. But baby buffalo, for sure, that's fair game for a male leopard. I've seen them also take baby elephants, and I've seen them take baby rhinos. Beyond that, no. So they won't go after sub-adults or even adults of those three, because they just get far too big for them and too strong, and the leopard is not able then to deal with that. And it's also, the risk is so huge for an animal that doesn't have a pride and can't rely on other animals to help with being able to feed itself. There is no point in going after those animals. It really makes life a lot more difficult. They could get really badly injured, and so at the end of the day, it's better for him to go after things like impalas, like what he's caught here, because a female impala that is not going to offer nearly as much resistance, but yet is still a great meal for him, is a far better bet than going after something like a buffalo or a rhino or elephant or any of those kind of things. Funny enough, though, I have seen Tingana on a giraffe carcass, so I've seen him hunting, well, basically hunted and killed a giraffe that was fairly large. I've got a photo somewhere of it where he was feeding off of the giraffe, and you can actually get a sort of sense of the size. I'll try and find it quickly. I think I've got it here somewhere. So let me just have a look. It will be quite a while ago. But it's amazing how big that giraffe was, and the fact that he managed to bring it down was pretty impressive. The thing is, though, as he gets a little bit older and as he starts to kind of get to the point where he's not going to be able to move as fast or be as strong and as powerful, pulling things like that down is going to get harder and harder and harder, and he's going to have a situation where he's going to really struggle to be able to actually pull down a large animal of that size. Right. I'm going to sit here with Tingana probably the whole afternoon. There's a breeze blowing, it's a beautiful day. He's sitting here. The chance of him climbing this magnificent marula is very high. And so while I sit here, I believe James Henry, who has found himself in a new location on a new type of set for the TV shows that are coming up. Well, we are busy watching VM's genius at work as he films the beauty of Tingana's coat and the pulsating breathing that Tingana is having as he sits here and tries to fend off everything. You can see his skin is twitching with all the flies that are landing on him. There's plenty of biting flies around. He's hot, he's uncomfortable, he's full, and the insects are driving him crazy. And it's funny to watch him because he's constantly twitching, moving, his head comes up, then he growls and kind of not very happy with all the insects, tries to bite them, and then he goes back down, and then the tail starts flicking, and he's really having an uncomfortable time. And I'm surprised that he's sitting there because there's a beautiful termite mound just off to our left that I showed you earlier. There's this big tree that he could go up into, which would have a lot of would catch a lot more of this breeze that's blowing than if he were to lay where he is now. So I'm not sure why he's down there. Maybe he's just finding it comfortable in the green grass. I'm not quite sure. Savage, yes, leopards will eat bugs if they have to. I've seen leopards feeding off winged owlets, so I've seen them lapping up termites before. But it's not a common situation to see. That would be a real kind of desperation or just maximizing an opportunity. At the end of the day, lapping up a whole bunch of termites doesn't take any effort whatsoever. And ultimately, they are protein-rich resource, and so it's sometimes why they go after them. But it's really a low down on the menu, particularly for the leopards that we see here in the Sabi Sands. These are big individuals, some of the biggest leopards in the world that we get here, both female and male, and so they need rather larger items to sustain themselves and to make sure that they're in a situation that they can actually feed and find nutrients that they need. If you go to the leopards that are in the mountainous areas of South Africa, excuse me, down in Cape Town and in those areas, the Cedarburg Mountains, those leopards there, the big males that you see are smaller than our females, and they will then rely on things like insects and small rodents much more than what our leopards here would do. But yes, it is possible that they will go after them. And leopard has got a very varied array of food, and we were talking earlier about them hunting rhino calves and buffalo calves and giraffe and those kind of things. But you also have a situation, you see how he growls at them and tries to bite them. Tinky, are you having a tough day, buddy? Is it hard at the office today? Shame. It must be uncomfortable when you're covered in fur and it's hot and there's insects all around you because you've been eating meat and they're trying to get the moisture from your nose and your gums. It can't be a pleasant experience at all, and so I'm not surprised he gets a bit grumpy with them. The good thing is that you saw him yawning. Well, there we go, he's yawning now again, and that's sometimes an indication that he might get up. So maybe he's going to go, and the light is getting absolutely perfect for a little ascent into the tree, and so hopefully he does decide to stand up and walk off towards the tree, and maybe we'll get lucky with him going up and trying to get into that tree to go and feed off this female impala. He's not exactly rounded, so I'm sure he does have a chance to go and feed a little bit this evening. Right, well, while we wait and while we try and see if he does get up, let's go back across to Noelle, who I know is around and been driving about looking for all kinds of wonderful things, and I wonder what she's had on her travels this afternoon. Well, he is moving now, which is great news. I think, though, that he's not going to go anywhere near the tree. He's moving away from it. So I think what we're going to be doing is going down towards Gowrie Dam for a drink. So those of you who have the dam cam available, look out. We are on that sort of pathway in that direction. So I wouldn't be surprised if we head into that area. But he's just gotten up all of a sudden and is striding off. I think with all the panting and the heat that we've had today, I'm pretty sure that he's probably quite a thirsty boy, and so he might be going. The other thing that could be around is it potentially, because it's a female impala, maybe there's a situation where there's an impala lamb that he killed first somewhere in this area, or he's just sniffing around in case there is an impala lamb. He's got his nose down in the ground at the moment, and it seems as though he's busy picking things up. Maybe this is also where he killed this impala and then dragged it from there. I'm not 100% sure. We just saw the impala dangling from the boughs of that marula, and so difficult to say, but he definitely stopped there to sniff around. VM, I'm going to just move a little bit for you because it's going to be easier for VM if he does move. If I just go a little bit to the left, which is exactly what he is doing now. So we go around this side. But the light on his coat is just absolutely exquisite. If I can get onto the right side of him and just get round onto the sort of western side of where he is, which he's not making very easy at the moment because he keeps stopping in places where I can't really pass him, it's going to be absolutely beautiful. Now he's looking up into this tree as well, but your kill is on the other side, Tingana. What are you looking for? Maybe there was something else that was around that he managed to find during the night and he already consumed it. Because I was looking at the impala, it's not as far eaten as I first initially thought. I first thought there was quite a lot missing because the back legs looked as though they were stripped. But when we got up close, that whole front end of the impala, the ribs, that section is absolutely whole. So he hasn't even eaten any of the organs yet. He's only really eaten 2 back legs. And so it'll be interesting to know if maybe he had something else last night, although his stomach is not massive. You can see that fold of skin that can still extend quite a bit if he eats more. Ilana, who's 14 years old, you want to know why leopards don't get certain diseases like people do. Well, the thing is about all animals is that some animals suffer from things and that other animals don't. So there are bugs and viruses and bacteria that are unique to each species that have evolved to be able to kind of keep the numbers of that species down. If we think of humans, we've had malaria, we've got TB, we've got all kinds of things that we get, and some of the animals don't suffer from that because they've grown up for generations in these areas, a bit of scent marking and going to the toilet, and they've had a situation where they've been able to build up an immune system to a lot of the things that affect us. We take antibiotics and other things because our immune systems are not strong enough to deal with certain things. That's not to say that leopards and lions and various other predators don't get diseases of their own. We know that distemper, rabies, various other TB, these are all prevalent things in some of the cats that we get in this area. But as long as they're able to find food and generally try and kind of keep out of the way of other predators, they can normally sort of ride a fairly good life. You find a situation where a lot of the cats that we have, particularly the the lions, do actually have TB, and they end up with a situation where it kind of manifests and shows itself a lot later on in life and not so much early, when they're younger, fitter, healthier, and they're able to find food and water. I was just looking over my shoulder because at the end of the day, I also have a sneaky suspicion that at some point the wild dogs are going to arrive here. They were north of us today. They're still sleeping north of us in Buffelshoek. But the way that he keeps dropping his head and just kind of looking through the bushes, I wonder if maybe something's going to arrive, and maybe there's a hyena, maybe it's wild dogs, who knows. Now, Kathy, you want to know how old do they get before they naturally die? Well, it depends on whether you're looking at males or females. Generally, the average age of a male is normally around 12 to 14 years old, whereas the average age of a female in these areas can go as much as 16. So it just depends on the area, depends on the density, depends on the type of animals amounts of animals that we've got in these areas that they're having to try and survive in. If there's a low density of leopard, sometimes you'll find that their lifespan can be a little bit higher and they can go as much as 18, 19, although here in the Sabi Sands I have seen a female leopard go past 19 and another one that got to 20, so that's 2 different females that really got quite old, and that is incredibly old even in captivity, so it's an amazing thing to see. But at the end of the day, that's generally the kind of rough ages that we utilize in order to sort of average out their lifespans that we get for these guys in this particular, or ladies should I say as well, in this particular section. But look at that light on his coat. He is just looking beautiful. It is gold, beautiful light, and I'm hoping he's going to give us an absolute perfect display as he goes up the tree, because he's walking towards the tree, and as he stops, he's laid down, hasn't he? No, Tingana, you've ruined my plan. It was the perfect shot, because here on my left-hand side is the tree with the impala carcass, and he would have hopefully have gone up from this angle. The light would have been good. It would have all worked very well, except Tingana didn't read the script and is not playing along just yet. Maybe he's just waiting for the light to be that much better before he tries. Now, I'm just going to go around this section that if he does come, I can reverse back quite quickly to get him, and I'm sure we'll still have a fairly decent view of him through here. There we go. So it's not too bad. He's at least looking up at the carcass, and I love when leopards look up into the sky. It's one of the best things. They get these big wide eyes and they kind of look up, and it is really quite something to look into the souls of these guys and to look at the eyes and just to see kind of what this leopard is thinking is always quite something. So I really enjoy when they look up like that, and you can see he's eyeing out the carcass. So it's cooling down massively now. He is still panting, he is still kind of warm, but he's definitely got a view on this impala carcass and definitely wants to have a situation where he might go and feed off it. Now we're talking about how much of the impala carcass is actually being eaten. So you can see now it's draped over like that. And you see the back end, the 2 back legs have been eaten, but there's still some of the innards. You can see some of the internal organs, so those that are a bit squeamish, it's probably a good time to look away. But there's some of the internal organs, plenty of blowflies and various other blue bottle flies that are on there. the legs, and then there's still the full neck, full front end, and full front 2 legs. So there's a lot of meat still on there. Tingana, I would imagine, if he doesn't drop this, should be here over the next, I would say, maybe full day tomorrow, maybe into the following morning, if all goes according to plan. The thing is, though, is he's not massively full at the moment. There's a situation where he has got quite a bit of space inside to still fit more, and so he'll eat quite a lot tonight. I'm pretty sure as it gets cooler tonight, he's definitely going to eat a lot more and try and get as much as he can down that gullet, and hopefully then he'll be around for tomorrow and during the day into the evening, and I would surmise that by the following morning he should be starting to move off from this area. We know that Tingana is a bit of a glutton and he can eat quite a bit, and who's to say that another leopard also doesn't arrive here? We ultimately are not that far away from where we had Tundi and that little cub this morning. She, if moves this direction, she could easily bump into him. We know Hosana seems to be making a habit of showing up wherever there's a food item and looking around and taking from dad or his aunts or anything like that. So maybe he arrives, you never know. There's also a very good chance of a Mbula moving into this area. We're right up in his section as well. So lots of things to consider, but hopefully he will be around. It'll be really nice to have Tingana for a few days. He's such a difficult leopard at times, and I say that with the utmost respect, because he's a master of moving around through here and disappearing and going through areas that we just can't find him, and we tend to get these flashes and these glimpses of his life, and we tend to struggle with actually seeing him on a constant basis for long periods of time. And so when we get a situation like this where he's got a carcass, it's in a tree, and we can spend drives with him and actually sit and enjoy his company and enjoy watching him for long periods of time, it is actually a very special treat, and we are fortunate that he's done it where he has, and that it's a beautiful spot, and particularly in the late afternoon, it is the most magical kind of tree. The sun is perfect, and even in the morning, tomorrow morning, when the sun rises, it will be absolutely wonderful. Right, now, I'm sure Tingana is going to get up at some point. He's still a bit yawny. He's still looking around. I think he's lightened the load by going to the toilet, so it should be easier for him to climb. But while we wait for him to do so, let's go across to Jamie, who has got something that I've seen many a male leopard target in their time of hunting. Well, Tingana is now up and he's making his way slowly towards the tree. So we've positioned ourselves in what I think is possibly our best sort of viewpoint that we're going to get of him. You see how he's just kind of meandering in, looking up at the tree every now and then, sniffing around. He's got his tongue out. What are you doing? Now he's going to do a bit of scent marking around the area. But I'm just quite strange there. For a second he had his tongue out, almost touching the grass stems as he was doing it, or grass stalks, should we say. And I wonder if maybe he was just kind of picking up something with his tongue. Their tongues are very sensitive. I'm sure there's some sort of feel, or I don't even know, maybe there's some sensory cells within it that is able to pick up taste or scent from it. I'm not 100% sure, but what I am sure of is that he is going to go up this tree. That's what I think at this stage. I'm not 100% sure when, but there we go. How cool is that? Come on. Looks like he's just catching his breath a little bit now before he goes up to the top. But watching a leopard climb is one of the most incredible things. The way that they just go up without even having to kind of worry, it's effortless for them. There we go. And that typical leopard jump as he goes up. How cool was that? I love it when leopards do that. It's the best thing, especially when they've got that little jump as they go up onto the branches and towards the carcass. It's the best. Well, that was cool. Well done, VM. Very nice. Now I'm going to try and get us into a situation. Don't fall, Tingana. Tingana's having a tough time there, I think. So I'm going to try and get us into a better position where we can try and just see him. Where the carcass is not that easy to actually see. So from where we are here, VM, I think it's going to be too extreme for VM. So let's try and just get back a little bit. What do you think, Vim? A little bit further back. Over that hole. Okay. So I'm going to try and miss the hole completely, which at this stage I'm not doing. So let's try and get round a little bit. Are we good there, Vim? Looks like it. We'll soon know, though. If we go flying into a ditch, we're going to soon find out as to what we're doing. So it is quite an extreme angle. He's not too far from where we are. It's just that if we go further back, all of those branches that you see there sort of start to make it very difficult to actually see him. It's better just to be slightly underneath the sort of canopy area in terms of the view of the camera to be able to then see him tucking in to his meal. Although the way that he's sitting now, I'm not 100% sure. Let's try forward a little bit. Nice to see his paw, though. Not so much the bits of impala that are hanging out. And there's that belly that's also being wedged in there. But I think if we go round a little bit, Vim, we're going to be in a better space here to be able to see his face at least. Because it doesn't even look like he's feeding now. It looks as though he's almost just licking the carcass and kind of panting a bit and just catching his breath from climbing. So we'll try and just go forward again and just see. I know I came through this way earlier. The problem is they've done a bit of clearing of certain branches. There we go. That's the money shot over there. So a lot better to be able to see him. Now I'm pretty sure Tingana is going to sit up here and he's going to feed and he's going to go ahead with going through that impala. So while we sit and watch him and see if we can get him coming out a little bit clearer than what it is now, let's go across to Steph, who's got a beautiful lanky animal on walk. Well, he is being wonderful if you like watching him eat, because he is tucking in with a lot of vigor at the moment. He's gotten himself into that stomach cavity and he's eaten what looked like the liver just now. He pulled a big chunk out. I don't know what it was, but he seemed to devour that in a space of seconds. And the way that he's eating, as though he's never eaten before, he's absolutely hoovering down this impala. And so there's going to be a situation where maybe I'm wrong, maybe he won't be here tomorrow night, but he certainly is going at it the best way that he can. What's also interesting is I've just been watching with VM and I was talking to him about it, is that in the last few times I've seen Tingana, I've noticed that on his right paw, now we can't see it very well now because he's just moved his paw, but hopefully he'll move it back a little bit. And on his right paw, it seems as though his one claw is still sticking out and doesn't actually sheath properly, and it ends up being a lot blunter than the others. And I want to actually try and check his tracks. There we go. You can see the claw that sticks out, and you see it's not as sharp as maybe some of the other claws. It's almost got a blunted edge. I want to check some of his tracks, particularly in soft sand, and see if that claw mark actually does make an appearance and that we can actually see it. Now, I know that we've seen a track here where we say it's a hyena with 3 lobes, but I wonder if maybe Tingana's claw just sticks out and makes these little claw marks sometimes. It's been an interesting track to check, and something that I've only noticed in the last few times I've seen him. And you can see there, it is a lot blunter, and it's almost broken in comparison to the other claws. If you see the other claws that are out now, there you go, you can see they're long, they are sharp, but that middle one is almost blunted and it's just sticking out. It never goes back in at all, which is really quite interesting to see. And I wonder what happened there. Maybe that was in an altercation with another leopard. He ripped the claw out and it's still growing back properly, but it definitely doesn't seem to go back in at all. Palin, you're wondering if the stomach acid would harm a predator? Well, it depends on the animal. Some animals have far stronger stomach acids than others. If you think of something like a hyena, hyenas are able to digest really a lot of different things, and their stomach is quite strong. Their constitution, as we say, is very strong. Whereas something like an impala doesn't need as much in terms of the acids, because most of it is broken down by a mechanical breakdown. So they use their teeth to chew and regurgitate, rechew, regurgitate, rechew, and they just keep doing that until they mush it down as small as possible. So you find that the predators tend to have a much stronger stomach acid. The other thing is that they very seldom actually eat the contents of the stomach. You'll find they eat the lining of that stomach, but it seems as though that doesn't affect them at all. I've seen many of the cats eating different stomach linings in my time, and so it seems as though they have no adverse effect. And like I say, the actual acidity of an impala's stomach versus something like hyena would be very interesting to know, but I would imagine that the hyenas is far more acidic than what we would see out of something like an impala. But it's amazing to watch him manipulate this carcass, and you can see he's basically going through the sternum now. So he's gotten some of those internal organs, and he's now just eating his way straight through, opening everything up. And I'm pretty sure soon we're going to see him going in towards the heart, if it's still inside there, and a few other things before he'll then start feeding his way down the neck and then around the rump areas to get rid of all of that, and then eventually he'll finish up with legs and head. Right, well, Tingana is going to feast. I'm sure he's not going to stop anytime soon, but James, I believe, has found something that he's put under his little microscope, and I must be honest, I'm quite jealous at the fact that he's got his microscope out and about with him. Now, unfortunately, there's a few gremlins still floating about. They're far better today than they were at times this morning and yesterday afternoon, but still two that are around. It is just the most beautiful scene though at the moment. We've got Tingana feeding up in the tree, and he's, like I say, really going to town. He's kind of opened up that whole stomach area, and he's going now just through the back of the ribs and up onto those fillets, and you can see the few of the stomach kind of things that have now come out because of him splitting that stomach area open. What you can also see is that today has been a hot, dry day. If you just come down the neck a little bit of this impala, there we go, you can see the meat has actually become almost dried in its consistency. So because of the heat that we've had today and the way that this wind has blown, it's actually dried that area out completely. What you can also see there is how these leopards go about killing an animal. There's lots of bite marks around that neck area. Obviously it was dragged up into the tree as well, probably from an area around there, but you can actually see how they dig it into the neck, and sometimes they'll even break that spine by being able to go into those areas. So it's an incredible display, particularly from male leopards. They have massive amounts of power in their neck and shoulder areas, and they often do break those necks. And I wouldn't be surprised that bulge that we're seeing is where there's some sort of shift in the vertebra that's happened with this particular impala. But it's amazing to see actually how dry that meat is in one day, because he must have made this kill yesterday. It's not very far from where Ralph lost him. I think it was Ralph yesterday afternoon. William, did you have him yesterday? Yes, yesterday afternoon he was in this area, and so he must have just stayed around the section, which begs the question as to whose male tracks did we see close to Tandi's den going southwards. Maybe Hosana was around last night, I'm not 100% sure. It's interesting though, either way. We know that Hosana was going into Little Gowrie and he ended up eating a tortoise, but maybe he came back and then went south again. I'm not 100% sure. But it is really a very beautiful view. The sun has unfortunately set a little bit, so the clouds aren't quite as spectacular as I was hoping for. I was hoping that we were going to get a lot more coloration in the sky as a backdrop, but it seems as though it's a little bit kind of light in color, really, is probably the best way to describe this. Guide Monkey, you're wondering if predators have a concept of when a carcass is no longer edible. I think it depends. I think it depends on how desperate they are. So last year during the drought, we saw that many of our predators turned their noses up at any buffalo that wasn't freshly killed. So many of the lions would kill multiple buffalo in a day. Hyenas even did the same thing, where they weren't going to go after anything that wasn't fresh, and so they turned their noses up at carcasses that were 6-7 hours old. Whereas now, because of the lack of buffalo, I think you would find a situation that all the predators, lion and hyenas and leopard, would maximize every little bit of a buffalo carcass if they could. So it's I think it depends on time of the year. It depends on the environmental factors as to how much food is available at the time. The more food that is available, the less likely they are to be eating rotten meat when they can get fresh meat. And it depends on the individual. I've seen some leopards that turn their noses up quite quickly at carcasses and abandon carcasses dangling in a tree. I've seen others that will eat every last morsel. At the end of the day also, as we were talking about just now, the acids and the constitutions of these leopards in terms of their stomachs and various other things, they're able to digest fairly rotten meat. And so I've seen leopards feeding off carcasses that are 5, 6, 7 days old, even in heat like this, covered in maggots, but yet they're still able to consume it if they're hungry. So I think it's just more a situation of survival, and as hungry as they can be, they'll then try and obviously get food and try and get as much out of it as possible. It's amazing watching all the little bits falling down. There's little bits of fluff that are falling every now and then, a few insects that are around as well. And I'm pretty sure those insects are not as impressed with Tingana. Before he was up there, it would have been absolute free-for-all for all of those insects. They would have been able to lay their eggs all over those bits of exposed meat and try, especially flies. Now that he's up there, he's shifting and moving the carcass so much, I think a lot of the flies will have unfortunately flown away. Right, now Noel is sitting at a hyena den, which is an animal that I would imagine will make a appearance here at some point during the night, but I wonder what's going on with her littens and whether there's any adults that have made an appearance that side. Indeed, he's being rather feisty with his kill. He's slowly but surely lapping up, and it actually looks like he's busy drinking there. You see, sometimes they will drink blood, and so you sometimes see them kind of drinking the blood that forms in the cavity of the ribs, and so it looked as though he was busy licking things up. And it's amazing, Wiem showed me just now, as he was kind of panning across Tingana's body, just look at how much fuller his belly is already. So just from this short period of time that he's been eating, remember there was a little fold of skin that was just underneath the belly. That's now starting to slowly but surely spread, and that roundness is starting to come. So it is incredible actually to watch the belly filling as he's feeding along, and you can see it's much larger than what it was earlier in the day. But that has still got a lot of meat on it. Definitely not going to be able to finish that during the night tonight. And that's if he doesn't drop it, of course, because he's got it in rather a precarious place at this stage. So, Lisa, you're wondering why there aren't any vultures around yet? It's for the simple reason that he's put it up in a tree and the vultures can't see it. And so that's part of the reason leopards do put it up there, is that and why lions will drag carcasses under bushes, is because it makes it a lot harder for any bird from an aerial perspective to be able to see anything. And so when it's up in a tree like this, it's very difficult to spot. When we got here and we tried to see this carcass, it was very hard. It was just out of the corner of our eye that we saw a little hoof hanging down, and then that's how we knew it was there. So for a vulture from above, it just can't see. It also can't get in there to be able to feed. Its wingspan is very large, and therefore not a great place to be able to go and feed and to actually get to it. And that's why you'll find that the leopards do put it up there, as well as, like I say, lions dragging them underneath, and why we're not seeing any vultures at this particular kill. Unfortunately, though, it is that time of the day, unfortunately, where we start heading back. It's time for a bit of dinner. It's been a interesting day, and a very, 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 very entertaining one from a point of view that from my personal point of view, I've had the most amazing leopard day from Tundi and the little cubs this morning, which hopefully will just be a story that will develop over the next few months and years as the next line of royalty is around, and then obviously to getting the Duke of Djuma and potential dad of that little cub in the kill in the tree. But from all of the presenters, of which there are many, and FC, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll see you all on the Sunrise Safari tomorrow.